Hi, this is George Lucas, and you're watching Brut.
Hi, Gus. I'm so pleased to meet you.
I was wondering, in your opinion, as a writer, producer, director, movie lover, what makes a great movie for you? What does it take?
Movies are images that move. I'm fascinated, and always been fascinated, especially in the beginning, on the movement of the image. And then I tied up with Francis Coppola, and he's a writer, director of actors. And I was an editor and cameraman, the film thing. So we had two different specialties. And we became friends. I became an assistant. We started a company together. So the idea of making movies, which I really discovered when I went to film school, which I didn't even know there was a film school, but I ended up thinking I was going to do a photography school. But I ended up, and once I got there, I loved this. But it really is, but I was sort of an anti-story person. But once I got into film school, and then after with Francis's influence, because he was a, actress, director, and a writer, he helped me learn how to write, and as a result, I started making more Hollywoody kind of movies.
Why do you think the Star Wars saga has marked the audience and crossed generations until today?
Well, it's about, it was designed as a film for 12-year-olds to say, you're going through puberty, you're very confused, you don't know what's going on, who am I, what am I doing here, what should I do, where should I go, what's my life going to be? And so I said I wanted to make a movie for them, and I wanted to make it entertaining. And when I was that age, I liked to watch Flash Gordon and Republic serials and that sort of thing. And so I said, well, I'll base it on that, and then I'll plug all this other stuff into it. And that's really what I think, when I did it, everybody said, oh, spaceships, let's just put spaceships in a movie. And I said, that's not what it is at all. And so it's much more than just an action-adventure film.
Was there a moment when you realized it had become a milestone in pop culture, that everything was changed?
Well, that was when when I finished it, the other two films were not well liked by the studios. They didn't want to even release American Graffiti. And the board of directors of Fox was having some financial problems. They didn't like it. They said, oh, this is not going to save us.
The audience did.
Yeah, well, the same thing with American Graffiti. They loved it. But finally, we convinced the studio that they should release it, because they were going to release it as a television show. And I said, no, this actually, people like this movie. And Star Wars was really designed that way. But the board of directors didn't like it, so. But I had, Alan Ladd Jr. and some of the top executives there were very much on my side, so that helped me a lot. And, but when it came out, the people were around the block, it was all crazy, and I said to Laddie, Alan Ladd Jr., who was the president of the studio, I said, look, all science fiction films do great in the first week. That's just the way it is. And so let's not worry about it, lines around the block in the first week, because they just like science fiction films. And and then I went off to Hawaii to be on the beach, and Steve Spielberg and I sat around and made sandcastles and things. And then I began to read, and some of my friends from the United States called and said, turn on Walter Cronkite tonight, turn on the news. I turned it on, and they did a whole thing about what a phenomenon it was, and that's when I finally realized
you remember,
it was a big phenomenon.
I remember I saw the first trilogy on videotapes, and the prequel, the second trilogy, in a movie theater, actually the same movie theater in Paris, and it was something. And I'm wondering, if they had existed, do you think you would have released them on a streaming platform, George?
I don't know. Streaming is very powerful, and it's great. It's really upped the movie business, because the theatrical movie business was we could see the problems, and it was not good. And so everybody was looking to streaming to save it, but nobody knew it would. And that's when Netflix took off. But at that point, I just said, look, I don't know what this is going to be. There's going to be a giant transition in the business. I don't know that much about it, and I sold the company, and I retired, basically.
In terms of special effects, animation, sound, you changed the history of cinema. How do you feel about AI, the use of artificial intelligence in this industry today?
Well, we've been using it for 25 years.
Sure.
And it's not AI, but we use all the digital technology because we helped pioneer. We pioneered a lot of that, especially at ILM, because for a while they were the only place that was doing digital. But the thing of it is that it's inevitable. I mean, it's like saying, I don't believe these cars are going to work. Let's just stick with the horses. Let's just stick with the horses. Mm-hmm. And you say, yeah, you can say that, but that isn't the way the world works.
What will cinema become in 10 years?
Same thing as it is now. There's one thing that's really, what happens now, and it happens in streaming probably more than features, but features are the same thing. Nobody knows what to do. The stories they're telling are just old movies. Let's do a sequel. Let's do another version of this movie. There's no, and it's not just in movies, but in almost everything. There's no original thinking. You know, it's like people just, I saw something, let's do something like that.
Yeah.
And it's also the way the movies are sold. If you go in and say, I've got something that you've never seen before, and you don't understand it, it's very hard to get a deal. I mean, you can do it, but it's like this big studios, I mean, they don't want that. They want something that is like something they've seen.
It's
because they don't have an imagination to come up with, to see something that isn't there. I mean, I got Star Wars done mainly because at the same time I was writing the script, I hired an artist to draw pictures of what I was doing because I knew I couldn't describe what it was impossible. But when you see the pictures, you say, oh, I get it. And that was really what made the movie, what sold it.
It's interesting because with Steven Spielberg, Francis Ford Coppola, Martin Scorsese, Brian De Palma, you were part of what we call the new Hollywood. Interestingly, Martin Scorsese said he didn't think of Marvel movies as cinema. Do you agree with him?
Look, cinema is the art of the moving image. So if the image moves, then it's cinema. You know, and I think Marty's kind of changed his mind a little bit. But, you know, we're on the Film Foundation together. He started the Film Foundation. But it's directors that got together and say, we're going to try to save a lot of these movies because they're falling apart in warehouses somewhere. So we're going to try to make them, you know, save them so they don't disappear. Because of the silent movies, like 80% of them have disappeared. You don't exist anymore. Hmm. And I said, we got to stop it. So we did. But on that committee, it's like Marty and Christopher Nolan and you know, a lot of directors who wasn't happy that I was helping to pioneer digital cinema. And I was trying to sell digital cinema, and they said, no, that's not movies, that's not movies. But finally, I don't know about Christopher Nolan, but I know that Marty and a lot of the other directors have come around, and now it's almost all digital. And I said, it makes so much more sense. You can do so much more with it. We've been doing it in ILM for 20 years. And everybody said, well, the blacks aren't the same. You can't do. We were intercutting digital visual effects into analog movies. You couldn't tell there was any difference to them.
Well, thank you so much, George. Will you make another movie, a very last one?
No, I'm retired. The last one I did as a producer was a thing called Strange Magic, which is an animated film. And so I was doing movies that I wanted to do rather than, I was financing them myself. I had my own studio and I was doing all that stuff. So anyway, now I'm building a museum in Los Angeles. It's keeping me very busy.
May the force be with you.
Thank you.